Hi everybody, Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're new and here, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, and give it a bloody good subscribe. Give it a subscribe because it's Sunday. Hope you're having a nice weekend so far. It goes too quickly for my liking, but anyway, hope you're all safe and well. Another one in our sort of series of hammers in hot water. People are really enjoying this, so we're keeping them going and putting them out again. We've done Savio, we've done Marco Bugas, and now we're going to move on to the original Portuguese Wonderkid, the original Portuguese superstar, Dani, in all his glory. And so talk about his journey, talk about his time at West Ham, and what happened afterwards, because I think that's almost more interesting. It's not necessarily the time at West Ham, because, you know, from like Bugas, Savio, not a lot of time they spent at West Ham really in their career, but it's what happens afterwards and where they go. So I want to take you back. I'm going to take you back to the early 90s. Going to take you back. In 1996, we had our own Portuguese superstar. This man, the man himself, stepped forward. Daniel de la Cruz Carvalho, or just Dani to us. So Harry was basically, to give you a bit of context, Harry was assembling this sort of Nations League of players, it seems, at West Ham. We had Bilic, we had Reaper, we had Ludo, we had Lazaridis, we had Slater, we had Harks, we had Dimitrescu, we had all these players, and we had another player to add to this ranks of these different nations. And in fact, our first ever Portuguese player to wear the claret and blue, and that was Mr. Dani. Or Dani, I'll interchange as I'm going through. Now, at just 19 years old, he'd already made his debut for Sporting Lisbon 2 years beforehand, in a team which included Luis Figo at the time. And prior to joining the Hammers, he actually had also just received his first cap for Portugal, playing against England at Wembley. And with sort of this increased sort of notoriety, having broken into the national side, Dani wanted more game time, something which I think's basically played his career. He wanted everything now. He didn't want to wait or work for anything. The manager of Sporting Lisbon at the time, Carlos Queiroz, obviously then went to Man United to, you know, coach Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. He'd basically grown tired of this desire of Dani wanting to find all this playing time, basically. And ironically, you know, it was actually at that game, that 1-1 game, that Redknapp was watching Dani and basically convinced the board to sign Dani, you know, put all the stops. Initially on loan, but with a view to a permanent transfer. And unlike many transfers then and now, the press never got wind of it. All negotiations have basically gone behind closed doors, behind the scenes. There was no leaks, which was really unusual for the time, and obviously for now, for example. But it was felt that, you know, the Hammers, for us to pull off this coup, and it was a coup, we needed to be secretive. If any other team had heard of these negotiations taking place, they may well have jumped in. And basically, the club had hoped that Dani would bring a new type of supporter into the club. I mean, the man was a professional model, and so that would naturally bring in more commercial opportunities. And in fact, I remember seeing, when Dani had signed, definitely more female fans at the ground. And actually, I remember, because obviously the program used to have a centerfold, used to have a poster, and I remember seeing pictures of Dani, you know, in that sort of one of the programs, stuck up around the corrugated sort of surroundings at Upton Park with like you know, chewing gum or whatever. I distinctly remember that. It was really, really. I can close my eyes and just see it. Particularly, it was on the North Bank. It was on the North Lower, definitely. It was corrugated between the North and the West Stand. I remember seeing posters there and around the backs as well. And you know, what was quite funny was he's a beautiful man, a model. He was complete contrast to his striking partner, Ian Dowie, who the tabloids quickly sort of nicknamed the pair Beauty and the Beast. which was exactly what the club wanted, and to have this sort of notoriety, get the sort of this idea of this beautiful man who plays for us. And indeed, Redknapp himself was somewhat taken back by his beauty, and so was Sandra, by the sounds of it. He says, my missus fancies him, even I don't know whether to play him or to F him. Thank you, Harry. I'll just abbreviate that to make it family friendly. And indeed, it was working. The signing of Dani was bringing in rewards. The club had anticipated. It was high ticket sales, commercial and media opportunities. Inquiries had increased. However, we needed some substance to this. It was great the interest, but if he wasn't going to deliver on the pitch, then he wouldn't have delivered. He wouldn't prolong this sort of new wave. And so Dani's debut. Tough one. It was against our bitter rivals, Tottenham Hotspur, at their backyard at 3 Point Lane. Some introduction for a young lad, particularly thrown into the lion's den, literally, but it worked perfectly for Redknapp. It was also on Monday Night Football as well, so it wasn't just the attending crowd watching him, but obviously millions at home. And Dani scored the winner, heading the ball past Ian Walker in a 1-0 victory. He was on the back of every newspaper the next day. The experiment had seemingly worked in terms of West Ham. However, hence why he's on this show, Dani's career would prove to be almost as short-lived as previous hammers in hot water. Subject, Marco Boogers. Similar to Boogers, Dani hated training. And his teammates were becoming really frustrated at the lack of effort he put into sessions, always trying to find an excuse to not attend. And this sort of coincided with the emergence of people like Rio and Frank Jr., who were both much harder working in training than Dani. So there was this sort of them and us attitude in terms of how they would train. And so this got the wind up a lot of players in terms of his reluctance to train. Dani still scored another goal against Man City away. I think it's Man City away, might be Man City home, several weeks afterwards. But a mid-season trip to Spain pretty much sealed Dani's fate. So he'd basically been given permission to leave the team hotel one afternoon, but he hadn't reported back for training the following morning, and no one knew where he was. Redknapp comments about this, saying, come 1:30 p.m. that is, there was no sign of him. We were relaxing by the pool, and suddenly there's this tanned figure walking towards us, hair immaculate, sunglasses on, ever inch the film star. He couldn't, or rather wouldn't, give me any explanation. All the lads knew he'd picked up a bird, maybe even 2 or 3, lucky devil. But there was no way he was telling me. And that was the trouble with Dani. He loved the limelight more than the hard work. Back in Blighty, another missed training session at home, coinciding with tabloid pictures of him in a nightclub the previous evening, was basically the final straw. They placed him in the stiffs before his contract was cancelled by the club. Dani had literally gone from hero to zero in a couple of months. He'd only made 9 appearances for the club in its whole entirety. But then, that's where sort of the story of Dani at West Ham finishes, but it carries on. Despite his fall from grace, his apparent fall from grace in the national press, he was still picked to represent Portugal in the Atlanta Summer Games. They lost in the bronze medal game quite convincingly to Brazil, and he was in that squad with Nuno Gomes and soon to be hammer Hugo Porfirio, the man who never saw snow until Wrexham away. Those performances at the Olympics led Johan Cruyff to recommend him to Ajax. And he signed for Ajax in the beginning of the 96-97 season. He was actually given Johan Cruyff's number 14, which is an iconic number for Ajax fans in the same way that number 6 is iconic for us. Again, he had a spectacular start to his career at Ajax, and then he basically quickly faded and never came close to the billing that he'd come with. He was at Ajax for 4 years, made 72 appearances. It became apparent to looking through it that basically Dani it wasn't about the football, it was about the fame and adulation that brought it. So he was falling out of loving football. That's the way I saw it. I mean, he then had a quick 5 game spell with Jose Mourinho's Benfica before basically that fell apart and Atletico Madrid came calling. Atletico were in the second division, and Dani lined up against with Fernando Torres, who was that was his first stint at the club. They gained promotion to the Liga in Dani's second season, Atletico, and then the end of the following season, Dani hung up his boots and retired at the age of 27, not through injury or fatigue, but he just fell out of love of football, fell out of love of game. He loved the adulation more that football gave him, but didn't want to put the hard work in and dedication it needed to succeed in order to get the adulation. So it was sort of a double-edged sword. You know, he liked the fame, but he didn't want to work for it. That's the way I've seen the whole Dani sort of situation. I mean, you know, following retiring at the age of 27, he basically went off the face of the earth. No one knew where he was. No one saw him in the limelight for a while. And then he started to come back into Portuguese TV, a number of roles, culminating, as always, everyone does, appearing on the Portuguese version of Strictly Come Dancing, where he basically was the host. So he sort of was the Bruce Forsyth of Dança Comigo no Gelo. I probably pronounced that completely wrong. And obviously the popularity of that show in the same way it's popular in the UK means that he's still somewhat in the limelight in Portugal in terms of being seen in a famous capacity. But obviously he doesn't have to touch training every day. And that's it. That's the curious tale of Dani, the man who could have been king. The original Portuguese Wonderkid. It's obviously a very short spell at West Ham, then going to be headhunted by Johan Cruyff for Ajax, then playing for Jose Mourinho's Benfica, then playing alongside Fernando Torres for Atletico Madrid, and then going full circle and then going beyond Dancing on Ice, Strictly Dancing. Woo! And I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it a subscribe. Let me know who you want us to feature next. I think next week we're going to be having Javier Margas, the Chilean centre back, the man who jumped out of a hotel window and ran away. Just adds to the beauty of it. And what's quite funny is we're going this period now with we've obviously Savio aside, Marco Boogers, Dani. We're going to talk about Margas. We're going to talk about Florin Radachoi. All under Redknapp. And obviously we've interviewed several black people like Tim Breaker and stuff like that who talk about that time and what a strange time it was to be a West Ham player as well. But because it was a real sort of changing of the guards, you know, that sort of Redknapp era. And I've said that several times before, where you've had sort of the Bonds managing period, and then into Redknapp was very much still sort of the old guard, so to speak, the likes of Tim Breaker, Alvin Martin, Trevor Morley, Ian Bishop, and then it moved into this sort of weird bit where it was this League of Nations, where it was Bilic, it was Ili Dimitrescu, it was and obviously some were hits and misses. A lot of hits, Bilic, Mark Reaper, and a lot of them were misses, like Dani, Boogers, Margas, people like that. So there's a real sort of change, and then it sort of went even weirder, and then sort of went back to sort of an old. Then you had like the Canios and Freddie Canutes, and it's a very, very, very interesting period, very exciting period as a West Ham fan. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a great, if you're having Sunday dinner, enjoy. Hopefully the weather's all right where you are, and as I said, maybe become a channel member. At least subscribe. Have a look down at that little button down there for me now. If it's red, it means you're not subscribed. So if you press it, it goes grey. It means you subscribed. Brilliant. Then once you've done that, hit the bell notification. Then you don't miss any content we've got coming up. We've got some great X-Hammer interviews lined up for the next few weeks as well. I don't want you to miss any of them, but I would love you to have the opportunity to ask people questions. And that's what we try and do. We try and make them live so you guys can ask questions and see their reactions to it. And hopefully we'll have another, hopefully we'll have a game show rather than a sort of impromptu Q&A, but we're hopefully in the next couple of weeks as well have this X-Play game show with some really cool, really eclectic ex-West Ham players as well. So take care everyone, stay safe, wash those hands, stay lucky, stay cheeky, stay hydrated and stay positive, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Take care my friends, bye.
It's like a family.